Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajikacharya Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBD Founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajikacharya Stovdara Siddha Shri Srimad Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Gaudi Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shladadas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sekaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Giridhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Jamunamaya Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Brihat Madanga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, Chapter 10, Text 10. I'll chant it. Purushondam Vinirbidya. Purushondam Vinirbidya. Yada so sa vinigrataha. Yada so sa vinigrataha. Atmano yanam anvichan. Atmano yanam anvichan. Apo shri shuchi suchi. Apos rasik chuchi suchi. Purushondam vinirbidya. Yadaso sa vinirgataha. Atmano yanam anvichan. Apos rasik chuchi suchi. Anybody else like to chant? Shavanirija. Yadaso savanirgataha. No yanam anvichan. Anybody else? Okay. Purushaha, the Supreme Person, Paramatma. Andam, the universes. Vinirbidya, making them each separately situated. Yadaha, when. Aso, the same. Sa, he, the Lord. Vinirgataha, came out. Atmana, of himself. Ayanam, lying in place. Anvichan, desiring. Apaha, water. Ashrakshit, created. Suchi, the most pure. Suchihi, transcendental. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purusha avatar, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodaka. Purport. After analysis of the living entities and the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, the independent source of all living beings, Srila Sukadeva Goswami is now presenting the prime necessity for devotional service to the Lord, which is the only occupational business of all living entities. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and all his plenary portions and extensions of plenary portions are different from one another. Whoops, excuse me. Let me read that again. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and all his plenary portions and extensions of plenary portions are non-different from one another, and thus the supreme independence is in each and every one of them. In order to prove this, Sukadeva Goswami, as promised to King Parikshit, describes herein the independence of the Purusha avatar, personality of Godhead, even in the sphere of the material creation. Such activities of the Lord are also transcendental, and therefore they are also lila, or pastimes of the absolute truth, pastimes of the absolute Lord. Such pastimes of the Lord are very conducive to the hearers for self-realization in the field of devotional service. Some may argue, why not then relish the transcendental lila of the Lord as exhibited in the land of Mathura and Vrindavan, which are sweeter than anything in the world? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur replies that the pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan are meant to be relished by advanced devotees of the Lord. Neophyte devotees will misunderstand such supreme transcendental activities of the Lord, and therefore the Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related to creation, maintenance, and destruction are very relishable by the prakrita or mundane devotees of the Lord. As the yoga system mainly based on bodily exercises is meant for the person who is too much attached to the bodily conception of existence, similarly the Lord's pastimes related to the creation and destruction of the material world are for those who are too materially attached. For such mundane creatures, the functions of the body and the functions of the cosmic world through physical laws in relationship with the Lord are also therefore included in understanding of the lawmaker, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The scientists explain the material functions by so many technological terms of material law, but such blind scientists forget the lawmaker. The Srimad Bhagavatam points out the lawmaker. One should not be amazed by the mechanical arrangement of the complicated engine or dynamo, but one should praise the engineer who creates such a wonderful working machine. That is the difference between the devotees and the non-devotee. Devotees are always full with praising the Lord, who directs the physical laws. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 10, the direction of the Lord upon the material nature is described as follows. Maya jakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena kuntaya jagad viparivartate. The material nature full of physical laws is one of my different energies. Therefore, it is neither independent nor blind. Because I am transcendentally all-powerful, simply by my glancing over material nature, the physical laws of nature work so wonderfully. The actions and reactions of the physical laws work on that account, and thus the material world is created, maintained, and annihilated again and again. Men with a poor fund of knowledge, however, become astonished by studying the physical laws both within the construction of the individual body and within the cosmic manifestation. And foolishly they decry the existence of God, taking it for granted that the physical laws are independent without any metaphysical control. The Bhagavad Gita 9:11 replies to this foolishness in the following words: Avajananti mam mudha manusim tanamashrita tam parambhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshvaram. The foolish men, mudha, do not know the personality of Godhead in his eternal form of bliss and knowledge. The foolish man thinks of the transcendental body of the Lord as something like his own, and therefore he cannot think of the unlimited controlling power of the Lord, who is not visible in the acting of the physical laws. The Lord is, however, visible to the naked eyes of people in general when he descends himself by his own personal potency. Lord Krishna incarnated himself as he is and played very wonderful parts as the Lord himself, and the Bhagavad Gita concerns such wonderful actions and knowledge. Did I read that right? The Lord is, however, visible to the naked eyes of people in general when he descends himself by his own internal potency, period. Lord Krishna incarnated himself as he is and played very wonderful parts as the Lord himself. And the Bhagavad Gita concerns such wonderful actions and knowledge. Yet foolish men will not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Generally, they consider the infinitesimal and the infinite features of the Lord because they themselves are unable to become either the infinitesimal or the infinite. But one should know that the infinite and the infinitesimal sizes of the Lord are not his highest glories. The most wonderful manifestations of the Lord's power is exhibited when the infinite Lord becomes visible to our eyes as one of us. Yet his activities are different from those of the finite beings. Lifting a mountain at the age of 7 years and marrying 16,000 wives in the prime of his youth are some of the examples of his finite energy. Yeah, I got it. Some of the examples of his infinite energy. But the mudhas, after seeing them or hearing about them, decry them as legendary and take the Lord as one of them. They cannot understand that the Lord, Sri Krishna, although in the form of a human being, by his own potency, is still the Supreme Lord with full potency as the Supreme Controller. When, however, the mudhas give submissive and oral reception to the messages of the Lord, as in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, through the channel of disciplic succession, such mudhas also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of his pure devotees. And for this reason only, either in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of the Lord in the material world are delineated for the benefit of those men with a poor fund of knowledge. Om Ganatimarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam. So I'm gonna work through this purport here and try to elaborate on some of the points that Prabhupada's making, or just kind of maybe saying in my own plain and simple language. So I think the first point that's being made here is about how Krishna accepts these Purusha avatars, and Prabhupada's making the point that this is also Leela. And Krishna, he's completely independent. He can behave any way he likes. We're not in that situation. We're forced to take birth in a certain body, and our body looks a certain way. It can do certain things. We have to sleep a certain number of hours a day. We have to eat a certain amount of prasadam. We have to, we're kind of like, it's not just, we're not free to kind of do anything we want or be any way we want. But that's not the case with Krishna. Krishna's free to do anything he wants. He could be any way he wants. He could, he's accepting the Mahavishnu form and then Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And if he wants, he could change the whole thing. He could come up with some whole different arrangement. It's Leela. It's Krishna's activities are under the, they're not under anything. They're a different energy. It's transcendental. That's why it's referred to as divya. Janma karma chame divyam. They're divine. It's a different energy. They're emanating from a different energy than our activities and our situation. And that's why it's referred to as Leela. So that's the first point that's being made here. And then Prabhupada raises the question in the purport. He says, some may argue, if that's the case, it's Leela. Why not then relish the transcendental Leela of the Lord as exhibited in the land of Mathura and Vrindavan, which are sweeter than anything in the world? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur replies that the pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan are meant to be relished by advanced devotees of the Lord. Neophyte devotees will misunderstand such supreme transcendental activities of the Lord, and therefore the Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related to the creation, maintenance, and destruction are very relishable by the prakrita or mundane devotees of the Lord. I'll stop there for a second. So the point that's being made there, so that the question is raised, well, the pastimes of Krishna and Vrindavan and Mathura, they're the sweetest, so why not just kind of zero right in on them? Because they deal with conjugal love and like that. And, in a nice way, Prabhupada's referring to that. The answer that's given in the very next sentence is because we're not qualified. You're not qualified. And if you try to do something you're not qualified to do, it doesn't have a good effect. It won't have a good result. I mean, I've given this example before, but it's appropriate. I'll just quickly give it again. Imagine you're trying to learn how to play the piano, okay? So if you try to start off with, sitting down in front of sheet music for Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, all that's going to happen is you're going to get frustrated and you're going to give up playing the piano, or you're just going to make a mess out of the whole thing. It's going to come out a lot of noise. You don't know how to read music that's complex. You don't have the manual dexterity, the skills to, hit the right keys and etc. Forget it. You can't do it. You gotta play where you're at. See, it's like if you're just beginning, you got to first learn. Okay, that's a C, that's a D, that's an E, that's an, and then you have to learn how to read the sheet music. It takes years to get to that level. It takes years to get to that level where you could sit down behind the sheet music for Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata and and play it competently. Some people maybe never get to that level. But even if you do, it's unless you're a child prodigy or something like that, it takes years. Okay? So better just be where you're at. And it's the same thing in Krishna consciousness, the same thing in devotional service. If we try to jump to these, relishing the pastimes of Krishna in Mathura and Vrindavan, you make a mess of your devotional service. You make a mess of your spiritual life. And like, for instance, in the Vedic system, you have Grihastha ashram. There's a reason why there's a Grihastha ashram. Because most people, even who are taking up spiritual life, they need that. If everybody was able to just go, come to spiritual life, and then they just were able to be completely celibate and go right from, the neophyte stage to Paramahamsa, okay, but we see that's not the case. You see? So better to just be honest, be realistic, and accept where you're at, and just work, do the work, and gradually progress to the higher levels. And that's the point that's being made here. Prabhupada says, the Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related to the maintenance and destruction are very relishable for the prakrita or mundane devotees of the Lord. It's not a put down. You say it might sound like that. You say, "Oh, mundane devotee. I'm a mundane devotee." There's not any kind of devotee is glorious, and there's nothing wrong with being a devotee on a lower level. And as pointed out here, appreciating those pastimes of the Lord in relation to creation, maintenance, and destruction. Right? That's great. If you're fortunate enough to be a devotee and appreciate that behind the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material world, there's Krishna, as Prabhupada says here, there's a lawmaker, then you're very, very fortunate. And if you do that, just be patient. If we do that and we're patient and we're conscientious, we just keep up with the process. Gradually, eventually, we'll come to the stage where we are qualified and able to relish the transcendental Leela of the Lord as exhibited in the land of Mathura and Vrindavan. You see, it's just just have to keep with it. But if we don't do that, if we are like there's that story about the dog. He had a bone in his mouth, and he was walking along, and he was he felt pretty good. I got this bone, wonderful. And he came to a puddle or a lake or something like that. A little patch of water, and he looked in the water, and what he saw was, oh, wait a second, there's another dog, and he's got a bone. I want that bone. I want his bone. He became envious of the position of the other dog. So then he decided, okay, I'm going to jump in the water. He jumped in the water to get the other dog's bone. And in the process of doing that, he lost his own bone. See? So it's kind of like that, we're in a certain position. If we become envious, because I guess I can't think of what I can't think of what the other motivation be. What any other motivation be? If you become envious of the position, of a more advanced devotee, maybe the respect, the honor they're receiving, then and you want to imitate their position, what happens is not only do you get their position, but you lose your position. You see? I mean, why else would devotees be interested in the transcendental leelas of the Lord in Mathura Vrindavan? It's not for to enjoy like this. I don't think this description of the sensuous activities. Not in this day and age anyway, because now you have the internet. If somebody who's interested in enjoying amorous activities, sensuous activities, there's tons of pornography on the internet. I mean, you don't have to go to the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam to enjoy those types of descriptions these days. All you have to do is go on the internet and it's there, full on. So it's just a matter of false prestige, It's a desire for false prestige that's my analysis anyway, that somebody would want to go into, just focus in on those pastimes, the transcendental leela of the Lord is exhibited in Mathura Vrindavan, to present themselves like, oh, I'm some sort of an advanced devotee, I'm relishing these pastimes, when you're not really at that level. But it's a mistake. It's a mistake. It's when that's as Prabhupada points out in the purport by Vishwanath, quoting Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it's for a very mature devotee. Okay, so another point here is Prabhupada goes on now. He's kind of, in a mild way, he's criticized the neophyte devotees who are overly ambitious and want to go to a higher level before they're mature, before they're really qualified. And then Prabhupada has to go at people who aren't devotees at all. He goes here, the scientists explain the material functions by so many technological terms of material law. So they can explain, they understand what's going on to a certain extent. But he says here, but such blind scientists forget the lawmaker. The Srimad Bhagavatam points out the lawmaker. One should not be amazed by the mechanical arrangement of the complicated engine or dynamo, but one should praise the engineer who creates such a wonderful working machine. So that's the difference between the prakrita or mundane devotee of the Lord and the non-devotee. See, the non-devotee, he sees the dynamo, the engine, and he's just totally like, wow, he's like overawed with that. He's amazed by that. What an amazing machine. And that's okay. The devotee, the mentality of the devotee, he appreciates the machine and he appreciates the machine maker. He appreciates, wow, who made this machine? And the advanced devotee, he's able to appreciate, well, the person who made this machine, he does more than just make machines. There's so many other aspects to his personality, and he's able to appreciate those as well. So anyway, this Prabhupada's now talking about the unfortunate position of the non-devotee, who is not able to acknowledge, not able to give any credit. He's not able to see that there's, how does Prabhupada put it here? There's one particular phrase here I caught, but I'm not finding it now. Here it is, yeah. This is there. He nicely describes their position. He says, men with a poor fund of knowledge, however, become astonished by studying the physical laws, both within the construction of the individual body and within the cosmic manifestation, and foolishly decry the existence of God, taking it for granted that the physical laws are independent without any metaphysical control. That's what they think. They think, that's it. The physical laws, that's the ultimate. There's nothing beyond the physical laws. No metaphysical control. And so that's their mistake. And Krishna's response to that in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada quotes that verse, Avajananti Mamudha. He considers those people fools. Right? He considers those people fools. And then the rest of the purport is interesting. It talks about, it criticizes those people in that category, and it also subtly it's making the point that even there's the total non-devotees who they can't acknowledge anything beyond the physical laws, no metaphysical control. Then there's people in the category that they can appreciate there's some metaphysical control, but they have a tough time with the personality of Krishna. See? In other words, even for people who acknowledge that there's something beyond these physical laws, they're not independent, there's a metaphysical control behind it, accepting the personality of Godhead, that's a challenge. Yeah, that's not ordinary. And that's why Prabhupada says here in the purport, foolish men do not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Generally, they consider the infinitesimal and the infinite features of the Lord because they themselves are unable to become either infinitesimal or infinite. But one should know that the infinite and infinitesimal sizes of the Lord are not his highest glories. The most wonderful manifestation of the Lord's power is exhibited when the infinite Lord becomes visible to our eyes as one of us. See, that's a tough one. There's plenty of people out in the world today who believe in God, but it's really hard for them to accept the idea that God can become visible to our eyes as one of us. That's just really like, whoa, okay. And he goes, yet his activities are different from those of the finite beings. Well, you could say that again. Lifting a mountain at the age of 7 years and marrying 16,000 wives in the prime of his youth are some of the examples of his infinite energy. But the Mudas, after seeing them or hearing about them, decry them as legendary and take the Lord as one of them. So, I guess it would be probably about 99.99% of the human population would be in this category of, just they might hear about these activities, but they just take them as legendary, and they would consider Krishna as one of them. That's the position of most of the human beings in the world today. So, and they're consequently, Prabhupada refers to them in this purport as mudhas. They cannot understand that Lord Sri Krishna, although in the form of a human being, by his own potency, is still the Supreme Lord with full potency as the Supreme Controller. It's not an easy thing to understand. You have to have the mercy of the pure devotee to understand that a person who kind of looks like one of us, when Krishna was here, well, certainly when Lord Chaitanya was here 500 years ago, we have the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's pretty obvious. They say I've heard that he was 7 foot tall. He's very tall. Okay, but 7 foot tall is not 70 feet tall. It's not 700 feet tall. In other words, basically he appeared like a regular old human being. And from what I can understand, when Krishna was here 5,000 years ago, he also appeared like everybody else. It wasn't like, the Pandavas were this tall and Krishna was to the height of the ceiling there. No, he was just like, but he was the Supreme Controller. That's a really, pretty far out understanding, and most people can't understand that. It's just too much, but so they're referred to as mudhas. But there is a hope for the mudhas. There's a hope for the mudhas. And the hope is described in this last paragraph where Prabhupada says, when, however, the mudhas, which is practically everybody, and this is touching upon the importance of hearing, of course, for us, the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, and distributing the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada says, when, however, the mudhas, which, as I said, is practically everybody, give submissive and oral reception to the messages of the Lord, as in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, through the channel of the disciplic succession, such mudhas also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of his pure devotees. So that's the hope. That's the big hope, that people somehow or another, people will have the opportunity to read the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and when they do read it, they'll relax their skeptical mind and just read it and hopefully with a bit of a submissive, receptive mood, and then they'll get the mercy, they'll get the grace of the pure devotees. And I'll tell you what, be honest with you, I'm sure that's how, I don't even consider myself a devotee, but still trying, but that's how I came to Krishna consciousness. I just, got Prabhupada's books, and I just read them, and I guess I must have been it had some effect. I felt wow, this is something special about this book. There's something special about this message. And there was potency, there was some transcendental potency in Prabhupada's preaching. And that's what's being referred to here, that such mudhas also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of his pure devotee. See? So that's book distribution. We're distributing the grace of the pure devotee when we're distributing the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's the hope for the mudhas, which is practically everybody. Prabhupada goes on to say, for this reason only, either in the Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of the Lord in the material world are delineated for the benefit of those men with a poor fund of knowledge. So Krishna comes and he performs these pastimes as Krishna, as Lord Chaitanya, as so many different incarnations, and the pure devotees describe them, and somehow or another, the mudhas, which is once again practically everybody, are just able to just muster up just some submissive oral reception. That's the big hope. Just by that much willingness, they can receive the grace of the pure devotees and become devotees themselves. Not a lot is being asked of us in the Kali Yuga, where this is the most fallen of all the ages, of course, and we have to understand that there's a cycle. We're in the Kali Yuga. Before the Kali Yuga is it's the Treta Yuga. In this particular round of millenniums, it was the Dwapara Yuga, but generally it goes, the Kali is the last, and it's preceded by Treta, preceded by Dwarka, preceded by the Satya Yuga, and the whole thing takes 4.3 million years for the whole cycle, and we're about 400,000 years to the end. In other words, 3.9 million years have passed in this particular cycle of the four ages, and it's been going downhill, in other words, for 3.9 million years. At the beginning of the Satya Yuga, Prabhupada explains, in the Satya Yuga, everybody's like a Paramahamsa. And then from that point, it goes down. It just keeps going down until Kali Yuga progresses until the end. It's so bad, people are so degraded, that Krishna comes as Kalki and just kills everybody. And then the Satya Yuga starts again. So things have degraded to the point where we're so disqualified, for spiritual life, that we've been given the maximum. We're being offered the maximum amount of mercy and grace. Just give some submissive oral reception to the pastimes of the Lord, chant Hare Krishna, take a little prasadam. That's if we could just do that much, there's some hope for us, because it's the extreme mercy of the Lord. So anyway, I guess the conclusion is we should all participate. First is achar. First you have to practice, and then you can preach. So we have to do it ourselves. make sure we're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, reading the books, reading Bhagavad Gita, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and then try to give it to other people as well. It's an important part of Prabhupada's program, to do it yourself and give it to other people. And that's the way we can maximize on getting the mercy of the pure devotee, the grace of the pure devotee. So I'll stop there. Does anybody have any? Yeah, Archita. Thank you.
Hi, first of all, I want to thank you for accepting this class on short notice. Abai Das was scheduled originally, but he had an emergency medical thing, so he had to do. One point that you brought up that I think needs a little more explanation is the idea of Grihastha ashram. And, you made it sound almost like it's not really a good thing, but, better you do it than don't. But Prabhupada dealt with that very directly. He said it's a natural progression of Varna and ashram. It's a natural progression. It's not that only those who are fallen or can't. And he pointed out that almost all of our acharyas were grihasthas. Doesn't mean they weren't pure. They became grihasthas because they weren't pure. Pure devotees can appear in any ashram, as brahmacharis, as grihasthas, as vanaprasthas, or sannyasis. So being in the grihastha ashram does not necessarily mean that a person is fallen. He said Lord Chaitanya married twice. So being married is not an indication of being fallen. So that's the first point. However, previously, grihastha was accepted either by the order of or with the sanction of the guru. And there's famous cases like the 4 Kumaras and Lord Brahma. He ordered them to get married. They said no, so he got angry because it was unusual for the disciple or follower to not accept that order. Same thing with Parshuram and Bhishmadev. He ordered them to get married. He said no, so they fought. At the end, Parshuram actually sanctioned. He said, yes, you can remain brahmachari. So at least in that case, there was sanction, even though the order was disobeyed. Now in Prabhupada's case, with his International Society for Krishna Consciousness, you could say he ordered, or at least strongly suggested, don't remain boyfriend, girlfriend, get married. And for that reason, he personally participated in marrying his disciples. So the point is, being married, getting into Grihastha ashram is not necessarily to be seen as a fall down or you're weak or whatever. It's a natural progression of Varna and ashram. You take lessons as a brahmachari, brahmacharini in our case, then you get married, then you become vanaprastha, and then in the case of the men, you take sannyas. It's a natural progression. So unfortunately, in the early days, the devotees were seeing it as a fall down. Oh, I can't stay brahmachari, I'm fallen if I get married, I shouldn't. That's not the case, it's a natural progression. So we should not think of it that way. We should see it, it's a natural progression of Varna. Now, again, the sanction of the guru should be there, and that's what's kind of missing nowadays. People just do it independently. I'm a brahmachari and I decide I want to get married, so I just start looking around for a while. Not necessarily. You should still go through the authorities. That's the Vedic system, and it actually works best. It takes the pressure off of you. If you approach your guru and say, I'd like your permission to get married, he may or may not give. He may say, no, I want you to remain brahmachari for a little longer. And if you're actually surrendered to the guru, then you'll do that. If you're not surrendered to the guru, then you don't really have a guru. See, guru means the one who gives you the orders that you execute in your life.
Well, I think you made an excellent case there, but I mean, to be honest with you, I can definitely remember off the top of my head, some statement by Prabhupada, it's right out of the Bhagavatam, where he says, Grihastha ashram is a concession for those who can't control their senses. I mean, somebody could make a case to the opposite, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not prepared to do it right now. I'd have to do some more research, but I think definitely one could make a case to support what I said as well, that it's really not ideal, but it's something that, it's there for people who are less advanced. And
so then we would be saying that about Prabhupada himself or Bhaktivinoda Thakur. They all got married. That's my point. That you can't just indicate that somebody's fallen. Yes, in general, that may be correct.
In general.
But just you can't point and say, this person became a grihastha, therefore they were fallen.
I agree with that.
It's not.
I agree with
Absolutely not. Prabhupada said that. There was a famous conversation with a sannyasi where he pointed it out. Because they asked, Prabhupada, why do pure devotees get married? And Prabhupada said, because it's natural. And the same person asked again, Prabhupada, but why do pure devotees get married? Because it's natural. Then he asked a third time, and Prabhupada said, you're asking because you want to get married. He was already a sannyasi, so that was an insult. You see? So it's not an indicator that a person is not advanced if they get married. And again, usually it's done with the sanction of the guru. So the guru knows the disciple. If this disciple is high enough, advanced enough to remain a Naishtika brahmachari and wants to do it, fine, you remain Naishtika. But in our case, we came in contaminated. So Prabhupada, of course, said, get married. Because if you're already contaminated, you were not a nice, sticky brahmachari, and now you want to falsely go straight to sannyas, obviously it's not going to work. And we see it didn't work for most of them who did that. So for that reason, in his society, Prabhupada indicated that most of us should get married. But in general, in Varnashram, that was my point, that being in the Grihastha ashram does not indicate that one is fallen.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. It's a good clarification. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Okay, thank you very much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.